Ooh, that looks tasty.
Welcome folks, today the Hungry Gamer is back with another mini review, and today we're talking about Maximum Apocalypse Wasted Wilds. And this is a game that I've had for quite some time, and I've played it a few times over the years. That's not, I've played more than a few times, but just recently I finally feel like I've played it enough that I can actually intelligently speak about it. And so what this game is this is a game that to me falls into the same realm as Sentinels of the Multiverse, Earthborn Rangers, Aventuria. It's one of those games where you have your adventure going on and each individual character is going to be encountering enemies as they go, but to win you're going to be managing your hand of cards, and for the most part you're going to have some cards that are going to do a thing right now, and other cards that are going to allow you to equip some kind of piece of equipment, and you're going to manage that character and kind of grow your character throughout the adventure, and then if you move on to another adventure, you will wind up kind of resetting your deck, though sometimes you might be adding things here and there. And that's kind of the broad spectrum of how this game works. So this particular game is an apocalyptic game. It's after whatever the apocalypse is, and you're trying to survive. And you're kind of working through, there is a story campaign that you can work through, and you're working through this game and you're interacting with different factions as you go, and based on the choices that you make, you'll kind of track you'll track what choices that you've made, and it might change things later on. And in this particular game, you have a map of tiles that you'll be placing out onto the board and kind of moving around and interacting with those. So there's a little bit of a kind of discovery map stuff going on. Now, this is also a new version of Maximum Apocalypse, because Maximum Apocalypse was a game that was already out, and this is kind of the new version. And in this version, they've added to it this weather thing. And as you go through each round, it'll kind of change the time of day, and that might change the type of weather, and different events will kind of trigger and proc as you go through. But that's kind of the core of how this game works. Each scenario will tell you you're looking for this thing, or you need to do this, and you need to find this thing on various kind of tiles around the board, and they'll be somewhat randomly set out, though sometimes they'll tell you this goes here or this goes here, and that's kind of how the game's going to work. So what do I like about this game? First off, there is a lot of content in this relatively small box here. I mean, this is not a huge box. In fact, I would argue for the amount of content that's in this game, it's a tiny, tiny box. So I do like that a lot. I'll also say that there are some pretty darn helpful little game trays in there. Everything doesn't fit in there perfectly. I guess if I had kind of some of the old content that I was bringing into it, it might fit perfectly, but it is pretty well organized in there, so I have to give them credit for that. The next thing I'll say that overall, I like the way you are exploring and moving around, because unlike in a game of Sentinels of the Multiverse or a game of Aventuria, and to a lesser extent Earthborn Rangers, you have a lot of control over where you go, and it's actually very easy to move around the board. And there is a ton of discovery that is actually happening every single time that you move, and I think that really is part of what makes this game feel unique from those other titles. I think it actually works quite well. Next, I'm going to say I believe the different characters have a very strong variety in between them. They feel specialized. Like the driver, obviously you're going to be able to do a lot of movement, while the butcher, you're going to have you got your little butcher knife you're going to use. And various characters have different weapons and whatever, and that also I think makes each one feel very different from the get-go. Even when they might all have cards that will just move you, or they might all have cards that'll do damage, they feel very different, and the details of how they work make them pretty darn asymmetric. Next thing I'll say is the weather system that is added to the game that has these kind of events that are kind of going to tick off and do different things, and you need to be in cover or not in cover or whatever. I think that works really well. It adds a good bit of tension to the game that I really enjoy. It, even when you're like, I don't know what to do right now, so, well, this weather stuff's going on, so I got to make sure I'm safe. Along with that, I think the scenario variety is quite good as well, and that should not be frowned upon. So what are my quibbles with the game? The first, and I'm going to say a lot of these quibbles are going to be things that are kind of, they might bother you depending on your play style. Many of them actually don't bother me, but just something that you should understand. I mentioned the characters feeling different, and they do feel different, and because of that, sometimes it can feel like you've picked characters that you just, you're kind of stuck. And can you succeed? Yes, but the combination of characters that you pick will sometimes make a scenario harder or easier. And that may or may not be your thing. Along with that, it seems to me, and I could just be bad at the game, that is always something that is here, but it seems to me that you kind of have to split up the party and kind of go separate ways a lot of times to succeed. And we all know splitting the party is always dangerous, but what I really enjoy is that feeling of you're working together and you're comboing cards, even though you don't exactly combo cards. I like that feel, but it always feels like you have to split up, and I think that loses a little bit of the co-op nature of the game, though, to be fair, I've never played with more than 2 characters. So it could be, if you're playing with 3 and 4, you get that vibe because there's just not that many different ways to go, and so I do have to recognize that that may be a me thing and who I've been able to play with. And then the only other thing I'll say is, because this is a somewhat randomly built map, sometimes you find exactly what you need 1 tile over. Other times you have to go the long winding path of impossibility to get to the thing that you need. And again, I don't particularly think that is a bad thing. I think that adds to the tension and excitement of the game. But there are times when you're like, I just want to find the thing! And I went the wrong way, and now I gotta walk all the way back across the map. And sometimes that can feel frustrating. But there you have it, folks. That is Maximum Apocalypse Wasted Wilds. I enjoy this game. I think it is right up there with those others that I mentioned. It's right up there with Sentinels of the Multiverse. It's right up there with Aventuria. It's right up there with Earthborn Rangers. And so, to me, the question becomes, which theme are you more interested in? Do you want superheroes? Do you want fantasy? Do you want this kind of more long-scale, open-world, kind of do-your-own-thing campaign, get an Earthborn Rangers that is a little less certain what happens with your cards, or are you looking for something like Wasted Wilds, which is apocalyptic, a little more linear if you're following through the different scenarios. And in Wasted Wilds, you have an actual map that you're exploring. So the question kind of becomes, which one are you interested in playing? What piques your fancy? Because I do think that this game is absolutely as good as those others. It just becomes, what are you most interested in? So there you have it, folks. As always, if you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, share, maybe become a channel member. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.